meat and potatoes. Not just a deep dive, it's the deepest dive into Minnesota Vikings football.
Oh, so many meat and potatoes to get to. The Vikings, of course, coming off the first loss of the season to the Lions, but still plenty to break down. A 5-1 football team. Judd, AJ, Forno. We're going to talk a lot about the Vikings defense and where things might be going. Adjustments that Brian Flores could make, and also some good. But first, before we start off, Purple Daily Meat and Potatoes brought to you by the exclusive personal injury law firm of Purple Daily. That's Nicolle Law. Nicolle Law, they know that when your loved one gets injured, ordinary life can come to a stop and things get complicated. During that time, insurance companies are going to pressure you. They don't care if you get better. They don't care if your bills are piling up, and they don't care that you may not be able to work. But you know who does? Russ and his team at Nicolle Law. They do care, and they have seen every play the insurance companies have. They'll make sure that you get the compensation you deserve after an accident. So if you've been injured, get Minnesota's local award-winning injury lawyers. Get Nicolle. Start your path to winning at NicolleLaw.com or give them a call, 1-855-NICOLE. That's NICOLET. Look at Russ right there roaming around U.S. Bank Stadium looking to protect you, just like the Vikings defense tries to ordinarily protect their team from giving up points. And with that, Forno, you are pretty certain or you are pretty positive that you see a flaw. Now, Brian Flores deserves credit. This team won its first 5 games. We appraised him, but with praise comes, on the flip side of that, criticism. Give me the complaint that you have seen on film about where this Brian Flores defense is trending or has gone.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the good, the bad, and the Flores. And one of the big things here is it's a carryover from last year, which I thought that they had improved the defense significantly from last year as far as schematically, but the same flaw exists, and that's Dagger. You're going to hear it a lot, and you're going to hear it ad nauseum. What is Dagger? For those of you that don't know, which I'm guessing listening to us, you probably have heard me talk about it many, many times. Dagger is when you have a clear out route on the inside and the outside receiver runs a dig behind it. So the idea of the clear out route is you get the safety, or in Tampa 2, that trailing linebacker to carry. Now that Camus Grugia Hill interception against the Green Bay Packers, because there's only one clear out route, he actually is designed to key on the dig because there's a guy above him, that safety position, that will end up carrying that clear out route. So he can key in on the dig. Well, the key with Tampa 2 is you run 2 clear out routes. That pole runner, which is the linebacker, he's going to keep going. And then that makes this gaping hole in the middle of your defense, which Dagger, you can just pepper in and pepper in and pepper in. And there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. And it's become a problem again. And I really have to ask, after kind of crowdsourcing, talking with other people who also watch the film and just trying to understand, does Brian Flores just see this as a cost of doing business? And he's in a position where, okay, I have this great defense, this great scheme, and we have these players who are so smart and they can manipulate really, really well. Is it just the cost of doing business that Dagger's going to beat me and I'm going to just blitz and pressure, and if the pressure gets home, it doesn't matter? I'm very curious if that's the answer, because almost all of his base coverages that he likes to use and rotate through, Dagger beats. Cover 0, cover 2, Tampa 2, even cover 3. Like, you can beat it, especially like the quarters look where he runs the 4 up, 2 under, where you only have the 2 under defenders and you're bringing 5, because he likes to blitz. But blitz is such an interesting term, because 5-man pressure is technically considered a blitz, right? Where you may not consider that a blitz. Like when you're watching at home, it's like, oh, they're rushing 5, but 5 is a blitz. And that's how it's charted every single time, if you bring 5 or more. So all these different coverages, Dagger is a beater. So how are we going to adapt? Does Flores want to adapt, or does he want to be like, okay, I know Dagger will beat me, but I could just bring pressure, and if the pressure gets home, which, let's be real, the first 5 weeks, it did. It got home fast, it got home quick, and it impacted the quarterback a lot.
Sure.
But against the Lions, and I wrote about this for A to Z Sports, they got 21 pressures, and those 21 pressures came on 17 of Jared Goff's dropbacks. He dropped back 29 times. 4 sacks. The problem with the pressures was they did not get home quick enough and they did not impact him enough. Not all pressures are created equal. And that's something that, like, when you just look at like PFF Charting, which PFF Charting is a great tool to use, but they don't quantify it with public facing data how impactful each pressure is. They don't quantify like how they graded each player with the pressure, because the pressure could come at like 5 seconds, but it still counts as a pressure. That's going to be significantly less impactful than a pressure that gets there 1.5 or 2 seconds, which is what Jonathan Gennard has been doing consistently this year. So those factors matter a lot when you're having this conversation, especially in terms of Dagger. So if the Vikings aren't getting pressure quick enough, because one thing that Alec Lewis pulled out of The Athletic when he was writing a pregame, if you get Jared Goff to throw in less than 2.5 seconds, he was 30th in EPA per play. If he throws after 2.5 seconds, second in EPA per play going into week 7. So basically what that can tell you is, even though he's really good against pressure in the blitz, if you get there quick enough, you can make an impact, but you better get there quick or he's going to kill you. That's essentially the bet that you're making. Right. And it's a risky one, but they decide, okay, if we can get there really fast, then we can make a real impact and we can take over this football game. Problem was they didn't. Why? Best offensive line in football. That Detroit Lions offensive line is fantastic. And I think one thing I wish they would have done a little bit more is attack the backup right guard, because Kevin Zeitler was out. Yep. On that first couple drives, he had 2 false starts and a holding penalty, or it was vice versa. Yep. He was a disaster those first couple drives. I wish they would have attacked him a little bit more. But look, you have to tip your hat to Jared Goff. He played extremely well. And even though he got a lot of pressure, he was stripped twice. Stripped once, almost the second time. And he was able to carve up the Vikings defense by just staying patient and not panicking in the pocket, something that he was really poor at 3, 4, 5 years ago. And he has grown into this quarterback who can just meticulously pick you apart while staying comfortable knowing that his offensive line is going to be good enough. And that's one of the reasons why Dagger can be successful. If you give them 2.5, 3 seconds, you can hit Dagger. But if you don't, that's when you get games like the Houston Texans. It's when you get games like the San Francisco 49ers, because they absolutely pulverized those quarterbacks and made them they just couldn't sit in the pocket and beat you in a calculated manner. They couldn't. Right. Because you were getting to them. And if Brian Flores is making the bet that he can just get pressure quick enough and Dagger doesn't matter, I can kind of understand it. At this point, you now have a huge 4-game sample size last year where Dagger crippled you. And essentially, Dagger was the reason you did not make the playoffs. And now it happened again against the Detroit Lions. Now it's 3 times against the Lions. I was willing to give Flores a little bit more credit, a little bit more grace, because his defense was figured out and he didn't have the personnel last year. Well, he's got significantly better personnel now, and Dagger killed him again. At some point, you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, if I keep doing the same thing with the same results, like I can't remember, it's like, I can't remember the phrasing. It's crazy. Right. It's insane. You can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results when they're killing you like this. So how is
doing the same thing and expecting a different result is insanity.
Thank you. My brain is so fried that I can't even remember simple idioms, but he's got to figure something else out. But one thing that I'm wondering if he might not be willing to is if he fixes Dagger, something like Mills will kill him. So Mills is a similar but different concept. So the inside guy is going to run your dig route. The outside guy is going to run a deep post. And what that does is it's going to try and get that deep half defender in conflict. Well, do I carry the post or do I crash the dig? Remember that Jameson Williams touchdown a couple years ago where it was 40 yards and he was wide open
against Donald's defense. Yeah.
So they did something similar. And that was a concept. I believe that one was Yankee, where you have one side, it's like a digger, a crosser, and then a backside post. So it's a similar but different concept. Well, you get on quarters, you get like Bynum or Metellus or Smith crashing the dig, and the guy on the far left side does not carry the post, you get a wide open receiver. So there are different ways to attack quarters. There are different ways to attack these coverages. I don't know if Brian Flores just doesn't feel comfortable in man, which I completely understand. You have some aging players, and man coverage is incredibly difficult to do with any form of consistency unless you're like the New York Jets. But you're in a position where you've got to change it up. You have to throw different looks out there, and you have to, hey, we're going to show you Tampa 2, and then we're going to like shift like 1 second into the snap to like cover one robber. And then you can't run Dagger because now you're worried about that. There's got to be some form of retribution. There's got to be some form of chaos that he throws in here. Is he saving it now that he's gotten through this gauntlet and they're 5-1? I don't know what his answer is going to be, but I can tell you if he keeps doing the same things and just lets Dagger beat you, it's insanity.
Well, let me ask you this then, Forner, because if you're telling me that he just is going to let Dagger essentially beat him every single time, and he's banking on that pressure getting in there, but you run into another team similar to the Lions where they have a good old line and you're just not going to get that pressure, and a Jared Goff or whoever the other quarterback is has 2.5, 3, 4 seconds to sit in the pocket. What is coverage wise? What can they do, and what can he have them adjust to that's going to actually cover those Dagger concepts? Because if you're telling me like they're just getting beat by it, well, what covers it? And I understand football is like this very intricate chess game where like you change to one thing, all of a sudden something else should beat that, and et cetera, et cetera. What's going to be what I'm yelling at my TV like, Brian Flores, do this so that you can stop Dagger? What is going to actually cover that?
Honestly, you have to be comfortable sending 4 rushers.
Okay.
Be comfortable sending 4, drop more 7 and 8 man looks, and let coverage play. Well, I would like to see a little bit more man match. So man match is a combination of man and zone. So I'm going to play man coverage until you exit my zone, and then the next guy is going to take over. That is the simplistic version. So if you are in my zone, I'm going to play you like it's man coverage, but then as you like, hey, I'm going to carry deep, well, then I pass you off to the next guy. It is a very complex way of playing football, but it's also a very good way of playing football because it has a level of that man coverage element without being true man, and you get closer to the receivers. There's theoretically less separation, less ability to sit down in a hole in zone and just be able to eat. They just have to try something different.
I will say this: there's no question that the loss of Cashman on Sunday and probably Thursday's game was huge. But what you're talking about fundamentally is this: this team is no question ahead of schedule, and I know that O'Connell expected to be good, but no one expected this. This is surprising, and now you've gotten through the meat of your schedule. So you brought up talking about the trade deadline before the show, and this is a perfect time to segue to that. What you're talking about is getting an interior pass rush presence, somebody that can actually get to the quarterback, Kenny Clark type. Now he signed long-term with the Packers, but we are talking like if you want to, because you've got the outside guys now, like that's not a problem, and it's not Daniil and I hope DJ Wanham can occasionally get home.
Yeah,
you've got outside presence. What we're talking about, I think, is will you pay the price right now for what it would take to get somebody? I mean. The ultimate would be a guy that might not be available, Dexter Lawrence, but then you've got Simmons in Tennessee. Could you get somebody who can apply pressure? Because then, Forno, you can rush for, and if you're rushing for, a lot of what you're talking about being a fundamental just issue goes away.
Yeah. It's very interesting, and I was listening to Doogie on the Scoops podcast earlier today, before we got on, and he said that he wouldn't be surprised if they start offering that first round pick. I've been talking about that for a few weeks. Now, theoretically, you'd be like, oh, the Vikings only have 3 picks. They're going to end up having 4. Judd, if you have the ability, ask if they have that 2025 7th from the Jesse Davis trade. Because it was a conditional 2025 7th that the Steelers sent back. I've seen mixed data to see if they actually have it. So I would be very curious because that would give them.
They don't right now.
That would give them 5 picks if they ended up having that.
Okay.
But the problem was nobody ever reported on the condition. So I genuinely have no idea.
Right.
But here's the thing with this year's draft. Top 10 looks pretty solid. The rest of the first round reaches. Multiple teams have like 8 to 10 first round grades right now. You are not looking at a top heavy draft. You're looking at a solid draft. So you're looking at like solid value in like back end of round 2, round 3, round 4. And especially if you want running back, there's going to be a ton of them. It's going to rule for kids and set up really well for how the Vikings are, what the needs are going to be. So with where the draft is, it's okay to not pick in the first round this year. It really is. Mm-hmm. So you get out of the first round by using this pick. And I think the Vikings will probably look at it like a TJ Hackinson situation. They traded for Hackinson not because they desperately needed a tight end, because they saw a vision for him long term.
Yep,
and they were willing to give up a package to get him and bring him in for the long term. So if you were to acquire a guy and you give up that first round pick, it ain't for a rental.
Correct. This is what I don't get. Like, I think people misunderstand that. And Kwesi actually fueled this fire 2 years ago, plus with his full Rams quote. That makes it sound like your guys trading for a bunch of like rentals. Like, this isn't the baseball trade where it's like, okay, we got 3 guys, all their contracts expire and we ain't keeping them. So if you could get a quality interior defensive line, nose tackle, 3-tech type of guy, and he's got term left, Forno, what you're saying, and it's exactly right, is it's probably better than what you're going to get in the first round of the draft. So I agree completely. But I mean, it's the full Rams thing frustrates me, because the Rams, as part of those trades, went and got from Jacksonville Jalen Ramsey, an elite corner who then contributed to them for several years. So it wasn't like, oh my God, he played great, but now he's going to leave us. So yeah, this is where I think that there's a very good case to be made, because you are clearly ahead of schedule. Your schedule is softening up now. You actually got through the tough part with 1 loss in 6 games. This is where I think a trade makes a lot of sense. And to your point about TJ Hackinson, it doesn't have to be, well, after this year, this guy's gone. No, he's not. So I love this idea of actually saying, let's expedite things here to get help for the future. But more importantly, in talking about the Dagger concept and what is happening defensively, to be better right now to win a game in January.
So here's the thing about going full Rams. The Rams didn't have a first round pick from 2017 through 2022. 2023 was their first round pick since Jared Goff. That's going full Rams, where you just continuously send pick after pick after pick after pick. And not only that, they sent I think it was 2nd and 5th round picks in 2017 to get Sammy Watkins. Like, they were just sending picks galore to get veterans. That's full Rams.
Yes.
You send a first round pick or maybe even 2 first round picks to get 1 player. That is not going full Rams. That is being smart and calculated.
Correct.
And if the Vikings need that kind of defensive tackle, they are now no longer available in free agency. Why? All of the projected free agents signed extensions. So I believe that when they prioritize edge rusher this offseason and their quarterback, they looked at the landscape like, okay, next year we have a really strong interior defensive line class and a really strong interior defensive line class in free agency. So we're going to make the calculated bet. We're going to fix edge. We're going to completely fix edge. And they did. And they deserve credit for that. But now the bet that, hey, we're going to have all these guys available is not turning out the way that they had hoped. And you know what? That happens. Sometimes you make a bet, it doesn't turn out perfectly. But now what you can do is you can try and find a guy who is elite and who maybe costs a couple first round picks. But even if you draft a guy and you expect him to be really good, who knows if he's good before McCarthy's signs an extension, a quarterback.
Right.
And that's something to be aware of too. It's hard to find really good interior pass rushers. And when you find one, you keep them. That's why all those guys end up signing extensions. And if you can get Dexter Lawrence, I would give up a lot for Dexter Lawrence because of what he provides, what he does. He is a 330-pound nose tackle that is arguably the best interior pass rusher. That is insane to say. Nose tackles don't pass rush. They don't.
He has 9 sacks. He has 9 sacks on a horse crap football team.
It's bonkers. But I will say, like, Joe Shane, I think, has gone as GM. Brian Daboll's done a really good job of coaching what he has available to him, which, let's be real, isn't very good. But they also did just invest in Brian Burns, and they just signed Lawrence to an extension. So I think Lawrence is a pipe dream, even though, oh my gosh, I would cry tears of joy.
But they're going to need help, right? Right, Age?
Yeah.
And is it easier maybe like say it's okay to pay that price right now, given how much money you know they're going to have salary cap wise after this year and moving forward? Because, a guy that's set to get paid, you're going to be able to probably pay him. And you no longer have a Kirk Cousins eating up a lot of that salary cap. You have JJ McCarthy here moving forward. Yeah. That's allowing you to do this type of move. So that pipe dream, maybe it's not as down the pipe as you maybe are talking about, Forno, or do you think it is?
So there's two arguments here. One, you could say, hey, I want to have a bunch of draft picks to be able to build around JJ McCarthy. You can make that argument. I think that argument works better when like the Bills drafted Josh Allen, because the Bills really needed to fortify a lot of different areas on that football team.
Correct.
They rebuilt the offensive line going into year 2. They traded for Stephon Diggs going into year 3, and then they were able to catapult. But they had a lot of work to do before they got there. The Vikings are in a position where they have your top 2 wide receivers set. They have an elite tight end. They have bookend tackles who are elite. They have a solid interior offensive line. They now have a really deep edge room. They've got linebackers situated. Safety looks really good. So essentially, you're boiling it down to arguably 3 positions that you absolutely need to look at fortifying: cornerback, defensive tackle, and running back. Because I'm sorry, I love Aaron Jones. He's been great for this football team. I don't want to count on him long term. I don't want to count on him at all. I want to have a plan. Yeah. I want to have somebody in there who can be the guy. And if I have Jones, that rules. I love it.
And I can't count on him. And to your point, though, on the running back, you said this yourself. The draft class is deep there. So, like, if you're going to hold off in one place, that's the place. I think as far as like hey, we've got a window of opportunity that you can't just count on. Like, you can't just say, you just wait for 25 injuries. I mean, look at San Francisco. Things weird. This league is weird. Weird stuff happens. And so I think you've been given the gift of, oh my God, 5 wins in 6 games, team better than expected. But Forno, you're exactly right. And this is what excites me. This is like the blueprint is right there. What do you need? Like if you could wave a magic wand tomorrow, what do you need? An interior pass rush would help a ton. And by the way, this is not to say that Harrison Phillips in his role is not a good player. I think he's a very good player. That's not the point. Or cornerback help. And the running back thing, I mean, unless Jones goes down, the running back thing can probably wait until the draft. I'm with you. Jones is not the long-term guy. I love him, but he's not the long-term guy. But yeah, you are looking at this and saying, okay, if we can improve either one, and if you get an interior rush presence, where your point, you can rush 4, you don't have to rush 7, you don't have to rush 5. Now the corners are going to hold up better because you're actually getting consistent pressure, and the interior pressure, as we all know, is the best pressure because it's immediate. So I love the vision here. I think it's crystal clear. I think the question is, do you have the ability, and I guess at the end of the day, the cojones to pull off a potential trade there to upgrade so that now all of a sudden Brian Flores is like, oh, this is great. It's Christmas in November or late October. I'm very excited about this.
You should be excited about it. And one of the things about, potentially trading those picks, you're getting a guaranteed commodity who you're going to essentially continue building this team around over the next few years. You bring in Jeffrey Simmons, his cap hits are around $20 million for the next 3 years.
Yes.
But guess what? You can also get out of that deal pretty easily because guess what? You only have to worry about the guaranteed base salary in 2025, and then you can cut him for free. So if he ends up taking an absolute nosedive, you can just get rid of him. And that's the benefit of trading for a guy. Now, you don't want to, admit defeat when you give up this kind of high price for a player, but it's being locked in is a completely different thing when you trade for a guy because you aren't on the hook for the signing bonus and you're only on the hook for the guaranteed base salary. So like when the Vikings traded Diggs away, they had to eat a bunch of dead cap because they had signing bonus tied in. You don't have to deal with that when you trade for someone. That's going to be a benefit. Plus, you're getting a guarantee. You already know what this guy is. You don't have to wait on him to develop. You don't have to wait on him to potentially become something. Oh, we hope he's going to take the next step. Dog, he's already there. And
right, exactly.
You get a guy
you
like,
have to develop him.
Yeah.
He just
you
has
get
to
a
learn
guy
your system.
You get a guy like Simmons. But the Titans are interesting. They are an older football team. They made a ton of bets this year that Will Levis was going to take a step. He didn't. He stinks.
Yep.
And they may be willing to be like, okay, we had a good core on defense. We have a good, solid core on offense, but it's not working at quarterback. Maybe we blow this up. And you have a relatively young GM who has only been in the job a couple of years, and he could be like, you know what? I'm going to go to ownership and be like, hey, I want to blow this up. Here's what I want to do. Here's my plan. And I think we can turn this around in 2 to 3 years. And it would probably start by trading
the
players.
Quarterback.
Yeah. And it would probably start by trading a guy like Jeffrey Simmons to get extra draft capital.
Absolutely.
And if you could do it for like a first and a 2026 third, like, hello, please and thank you. Like, exactly. I can live without picking the first and second rounds next year because of what the draft class is. And you always want to have draft picks. But this is a potential Super Bowl team, and a player of that kind of caliber could put you over the top. You have the rookie quarterback. You say, you know what? Screw it. We're going to set this up because you can have Simmons for the next 3 years after 2024, and he will be the centerpiece to that defensive line. Harrison Phillips will have such an easier job with a guy like Jeffrey Simmons next to him.
And he'll fit in perfectly. Exactly. Right. The clock is ticking, sir. Let's move to the college football draft potential related to the Vikings when it comes to Saturday's slate. Well, I mean, heck, now it probably starts on Thursday or Wednesday. When it comes to the slate of college football games, what should Vikings fans be paying attention to this week as far as draft potential? My guess is it might be a running back because, like you said, they are plentiful, and I do think the Vikings this time around are going to take a running back with at least one of their picks.
Absolutely. So I want to say this because we were going to spend a bunch of time talking about it, but we kind of got off track. The Vikings run defense was phenomenal on Sunday. The Lions EPA per play was 0.203 when running the ball in neutral situations. So in the win probabilities between 10 and 90%, essentially you get rid of garbage time. The Vikings held them to negative 0.396, and they allowed just one rush over 10 yards. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can be like 27 rushes for 144 yards. That's a lot. Considering what the Lions were doing and gashing every single team in the National Football League they were playing, they did a phenomenal job in forcing Jared Goff to beat you and not letting the running game do it, because the running game did a lot of carrying for this football team. Kudos to that group. Very, very, very good job in sustaining that. And I just had to give the shout out because we talked a lot of negatives about the pass defense and the coverages and Dagger. Sure. But great job in run defense against an elite rushing football team. They should be very proud of that.
Yep.
The one I will tell you need to watch one game this week.
Nice.
So actually 2 games. One for your own fun. I'm going to recommend watching every single Navy and Army game the rest of the season. Those 2 teams are explosive. They're dominant, and they run God's offense, the triple option. These are the best military academy teams I've seen in years. They got rid of
lifetime, right?
Yeah, they got rid of cut blocking, which was key to running the triple. The college football outlawed it 2 years ago. Well, guess what? They're running modified versions of it, and it's working. It's more fun. It's explosive. It's modernized. And Blake Horvath, the Navy quarterback, honestly should be a Heisman contender. Same with Army quarterback Bryson Daly. They won't be because they're service academy players, but they should be. And Navy takes on Notre Dame and Baltimore. They almost always do a neutral site for this game as well when Navy's the home team, because like the Naval Academy Stadium is nowhere near where like Baltimore is, and they can make that happen pretty easy. That's going to be a game to watch. I recommend watching every single Army Navy game this year. But the one game you need to watch is going to be a late one. Friday night, 9:30 p.m., CBS Sports Network. Boise State taking on UNLV. This is going to be a hell of a fun game. You have Ashton Genty, the unquestioned top running back in this year's draft class right now, going against the UNLV team. That 1 is very good. 2 is very fun. And 3, they have a wide receiver named Ricky White. He could be a top 100 pick. I think he may even go like top 70. Not only is he really good as a wide receiver, yards after catch, being able to generate explosive plays, Judd, he has 3 blocked punts this year.
Wow.
This year.
Gets after it.
Special teams make special teams. And if you can play on special teams, you are going to get drafted earlier than somebody who can't, who is on the same level as you. These two teams are going to be fighting for that Mountain West crown. And when the end of the season comes, they have the Mountain West title game. We're probably going to see a rematch. This is going to be worth staying up till 1 a.m. for. Okay. I can't wait. It's going to be a heck of a lot of fun.
You won't sleep all night then.
Oh, are you kidding? When do I ever sleep, Judd? I'm always working. But otherwise, there really isn't a ton on the slate. Oregon, Illinois has some. It could be interesting, but that's more of like a college football fun matchup rather than draft prospects. Bama, Missouri, like there's going to be a bunch of guys on Bama. Luther Burden, the third from Missouri, he's going to be some people's top wide receiver. He's my number 2 behind Tetairoa McMillan of Arizona, and I think everybody knows how much I love McMillan. I've loved him since high school. There isn't a whole lot to kind of hang your hat on. Miami, Florida State, but Florida State is so bad this year. Yeah, it actually warms my heart as a Florida Gator fan. 1-6 Florida State just makes me so happy. Yeah. But there really isn't a whole lot as far as draft prospect like matchups go. You're gonna want to watch that Friday night game, Ashton Genty and UNLV with Ricky White. That's going to be the one.
Perfect. Let's get on to some questions for Forno. Meat and potatoes questions. Age, what do you got?
Yeah, first one coming from John. He says, "What's up, Judd and Tyler? This team has been surprising this season and exceeded expectations so far. If you told me at this point 3 months ago they'd be 5-1, I would have been ecstatic. What doesn't make me ecstatic is in a close division game, I don't see Darnold feeding the ball to the best receiver in the league." He says, friend of the show, Declan, posted that on the final 19 offensive snaps, Justin Jefferson only had 1 target and a rush attempt, and I think that was on that trick play. I want to say. Mm-hmm. Is there a reason why he wasn't getting the ball? And if so, what does it take to make it a safe play to just continuously feed Justin Jefferson the football?
Well, let's look at those last couple drives. They got a field goal, a touchdown, and then a 3-and-out. And you know what that 3-and-out was? They threw the ball to Jefferson. And Kevin O'Connell talked about it because I'm like, one, I hated the play call. I hate sprint right option. Don't eliminate 2/3 of the field for you. It's dumb. Don't do it. I hate when coaches do it. But I wonder if they saw something in the defense that they thought it might work. But I hated it. I hated it so much. But also, O'Connell mentioned on Monday that Addison was not supposed to be in that spot.
He ran the wrong route.
There was supposed to be different spacing.
Yep.
You don't want to have guys that close because that creates traffic. You only want to have that in like mesh situations or rub routes where you're trying to create traffic to spring a guy open. Right. I got an itch in my eye there. And
playing hurt.
Look, you want to feed Jefferson the ball. You want to get him the football, but there's so many nuances. His presence can spring other guys open. Just him being there can make an impact. So while it's frustrating that, hey, they maybe didn't get him the ball nearly as much as we would have wanted him to, it's not like the offense was ineffective. So I think when you look at that stat, it's like, what in the world are they doing? How can you not give Jefferson the ball? But when you go back and watch, it wasn't like they were failing. That final drive, you got 5 yards on a first down run. Second down, run the ball again. Why? It's working and you're running clock. Third down, you want to be aggressive. You want to get the first down to keep that clock moving. And they tried to do that. Like, I think the play calling was pretty good on that final drive, even though I might be in the minority. But there's so many layers to Jefferson either getting or not getting the football. It wasn't like they weren't trying.
Yeah.
The Lions defense was solid and other guys spring open. When other guys spring open, it's okay to not throw to your best player because other people are making plays. So kind of a, not a hyperbolic, but like a stat that just like, you know what? It's got shock value. It's like, what are we doing? But it's a non-starter for me.
I think the biggest problem was it was a tight end game to a certain degree. And your tight end was Johnny Munt, 4 catches for 8 yards and a terrible drop. I contend that if TJ Hackinson had played, I think the Vikings might have won that game. Like if he was healthy, because, and look, you know, if you can use your tight end, that's great. But unfortunately, Munt has been extended far beyond what he's capable of. Like, he can catch passes and he's a really good third tight end, but he's not your primary guy. But yeah, so that was tough. Age, what do you got next?
Next one comes from Tommy. And this one actually, it had me laughing as I was reading this email. There was about I'll get into it here, but he says, "Hey, Purple Daily team, as if Sunday wasn't already bad enough with the loss, I had a nightmare about Jared Goff later that night." He then goes on to pretty much give me like a paragraph or two about this dream that he had where Jared Goff was side by side with him throughout his day, just doing everything slightly better than him.
Wow.
But we'll get past that. He says, "Just a really demoralizing way to start the week. I feel the Vikings defense had a similar feeling because he started the game so perfectly and was nearly flawless the rest of the game. Can you talk about what exactly he was doing that made the Vikings D look so good all year suddenly kind of middle of the road, very middle of the pack?"
I think we talked about it earlier.
Yeah, you did.
I really think it's simple. They protected him and Dagger. Like Goff, when he feels comfortable, is a very good distributor of the football. He's not going to be a guy that creates. He's not going to be a guy that wows you with arm talent. But you get him on schedule, he's one of the best in the league. And he's great at attacking the middle of the field. And the middle of the field is where you win Super Bowls. Like if you got to be able to do the stuff outside the numbers and threaten it. But if you can dominate the middle of the field, that's where you make your money because it gives you a lot of options. You can do a lot more in the middle of the field, but it's also more difficult because there's usually more traffic. So Goff trusts his offensive line full stop. And that trust allows him to be able to stand in the pocket and make those kind of decisions. He didn't have that a lot with the Los Angeles Rams. He wasn't that comfortable. He panicked. I don't know if it's just growth, development, but let me tell you, he has taken that step and he has become a really, really confident player in the pocket. And that is one of the main reasons why. It's sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are. Another guy's just going to be able to do things.
And Ben Johnson's really good too. I mean, he is a really good OC. I think that if you're a Vikings fan or a coach, you would prefer that he's probably the head coach of the Washington Commanders right now, but he's not. And so I'll be curious to see. Look, I think Dan Campbell's done a great job. So all due respect, but I'll be curious to see when Ben Johnson does leave what that offense looks without him. Hey, before we go, Forno, plug your stuff, your podcast, your written work, because there's plenty more to find from you.
Absolutely. Follow me on Twitter at @TheRealForno. I have a lot of work that goes up on azsports.com. I wrote about almost 1,200 words on the context with Ed Ingram and Dalton Reisner that nobody else wants to talk about, so I did. I also have my own YouTube show, Vikings First and Goal. The Real Forno Show, Monday, Wednesday night, 6:05 Central Time. A nice homage to WCW Saturday Night. For those of you that know, you know. And yeah, we do a lot of really fun stuff over there. It's very similar to what we do here. We talk ball and we have real deep conversations about a lot of different things.
Awesome stuff. Forno, AJ, Judd, we will see you soon on Purple Daily Meat and Potatoes.